Hello everybody, welcome back to the part 2 of the MERN full stack YouTube tutorial series that I am working on. I wanted to start this one off a little bit differently than I did last time. I kind of want to give a little bit of background information about myself, just in case of those who don't really know who I am. Well, currently I am a student at Western Governors University pursuing a Bachelor's of Science in Software Development. I am currently about, I would say, a year away from finishing the program, although I believe that I could finish it before that. If you don't know anything about WGU, you should check it out. It's completely online and it's all competency based. So, if you're willing and you're able and you're determined, you can finish as many credits as you can within their allotted term, which is 6 months. So they do each term by 6 months. So each year there's 2 terms, and every term that you pay for, you have the opportunity to complete as many credits and classes as you can. There are actually people who have completed a full bachelor's degree in 1 term, but I think those are outliers, and those are people that are way above the threshold of regular people and what we can handle. But hey, everybody's pace is a little bit different. I also wanted to give a recommendation, because I don't feel that I am good enough to really teach anybody that is learning coding from scratch. This is mostly for myself. Well, this is mostly to pass my class, but this is mostly to help contain the knowledge that I learned, because I feel that the best way to learn something is to be able to teach what you've learned. And if you can teach what you've learned, then I think that's a good that's a good reason to say that you know how to do something, if you can teach somebody else how to do it. And I guess that's pretty much where I'm at right now. So I would like to say Tech with Travesty. If you have the opportunity to check him out, he's amazing. He goes over a lot of coding, a lot of the coding concepts, and he goes over it from scratch, and it's super helpful. And if you watch some of Tech with Travesty's coding, you would realize that a lot of my coding, the way that I structure my coding, is similar to his, and that's only because I love the way that he codes. And coding is similar in the way that there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat. You just need to go out there and see how everybody else kind of does it, and then just take the things that you like from each person and create your own little method. But when you're starting out, I would say find somebody that teaches the way that you learn, and find somebody that explains how to code very well. And when if you do find somebody that you seem very compatible with learning wise, then watch everything they do, try to get into their head, and try to learn why and how they're doing everything. And I think that's probably been the biggest key to my success, is that when I see great YouTube coders, I try to emulate them. And if I see them doing a project that I think that I'm capable of doing, I will do that project over and over again until I am so proficient in that project that I could do it off the top of my head. Which is why we are creating this full stack MERN application pretty much off the top of my head. I'm referencing a little bit, but for the most part, a lot of everything that we've been doing has just been coming right off the top of my head. And that's where repetition comes in. You got to do it over and over again. You got to really implement like why, where, when, and how you're doing things. This is the most important part. But other than that, I hope you enjoy this video. Thank you. Hello there, YouTube. Welcome back to our part 2 of our MERN full stack tutorial series. If you followed along from our first video for you, or if you watched the first video, then at this point we should have our server set up. We set up our server. We also connected our database to our application. So we have MongoDB, our database, connected to our application. We also even set up our routes folder, a routes file that would allow us to perform CRUD functionality. So as of now, we have endpoints for creating a journal entry, reading all the journal entries that we've created, updating a specific journal entry, and then deleting a specific journal entry. As well as setting up our routes file, we also set up a journal controller, and this is where we are going to give our endpoints, our routes, their functionality. And that is what we are going to do today. We also brought in Express Async Handler, because that is, so for our functions in our controller, we can set up the function. So if we go to our config, we look at our database, the function that we wrote in order to connect MongoDB to our application. If you look here, you can see that we used an async function. And when you call in the sync function, you have to follow up with a try or a catch. With Express Async Handler, it's going to take care of that try catch for us. All we have to do is just call Express Async Handler in front of the function. And it just saves us a little bit more time. I think it looks a little bit more organized, and that's just the way that we're going to do it. And that's the way that I was taught to do it from some amazing YouTubers. And yeah, that's just the way that we're going to do it today. But also, before we get into that, I'd like to say that tonight I am enjoying my night with some Oregon Marionberry white wine. So if you like wine, if you like Oregon, if you like Marionberries, then here's my suggestion for you. Okay, so before we do this, we're going to want to add in front of all our functions here, we're going to want to add a sync. So let's go ahead and put a sync in front of all of our functions there. Sync. Okay, and then what we're going to do, since we bought a sync handler up here, we are going to wrap our entire function with our variable, a sync handler, and we're just going to put parentheses around our entire functions. So now every one of our endpoints, every one of our routes function is surrounded by our Express Async Handler. Over here, I'll just copy and paste this here. That'll make it a little bit easy. And don't forget to put the parentheses at the end of the function, otherwise you'll get an error and you'll never be able to figure it out. But such is life. Such is life. Okay, so now that we got this here, our sync handler is going to take care of our try catches so that we don't have to include our try catches here. And before we go ahead and create the functionality here, I learned this from Tech with Travesty, and he is an amazing he's an amazing YouTube programmer, and he does a lot of tutorial videos on coding. And yeah, so this is something that he's taught me, and I think it's something to be in a very good habit of. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to give a description of our routes here, each specific one, and this one is going to be description. This one's going to let us get all journal entries. Then the route that we're going to use, since this was a GET request, we'll say GET, and then the endpoint is API/journal. And then the access for this, once we set up our user model and connect the user to this, it's actually going to be private, because we want every individual user to have their own, be able to pull their own journal entries. You know, because we don't want, Joe to be able to get John's goals or delete John's goals. We want Joe to kind of stay in his own lane. Okay. So we're gonna say, so that was our get. And for this one, for our create entry, it's going to allow us to create a new entry, and the route is a post route. That's what we used for API. Post API slash, and it's going to have the same endpoint. The second one is going to be the access, and that's also going to be private as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and complete this for description. And this one's going to update a entry. Okay, oops, kind of going a little too fast. Routes, and this one is actually going to be a put request, and it's going to be API slash journal, but remember we also have to pass a specific ID, so we're going to say ID. And then the access is also going to be private. All right, so let's just copy this. I should have done this from the get, would have made things much quicker. But sometimes quicker is not better. And if you are learning the code, I would suggest always to write everything out, even if it's an opportunity that you can copy and paste it, since it's the same thing. Get in the habit of writing it out, typing it out, because it allows you to kind of memorize what you're doing. Okay, so now that we have that set up, we're going to want to create a model for our database. And what the model is going to do is it's going to tell our application what kind of data that we want to come back from the user. It's just going to tell it's just going to tell our application what kind of data and what kind of information we want to get back. So in our backend folder, we're going to create a new folder. We're going to call this models. Models. Why is it not letting me create a new folder? New folder. Huh. Oh, it's because we already have a folder called models. Okay, so we're going to create a new file in our folder, and we're going to call this journal model.js. Okay, and all we have to do here is bring in mongoose. So you go to require mongoose. And as I said, all a model is it's a schema. It's a mongoose schema that's going to allow us to tell our application what kind of data we want to get back from the user and how we're going to store that data. So for here, we're going to say const journal schema is equal to mongoose dot schema. And here, we're going to pass an object, and after that, we're going to set a field called text, because we're going to want to get text back from the user. And in our text, we're going to pass another object, and in here, we're going to pass what type. So we're going to want the user to provide us a string. And then we can also say required, meaning that the user has to enter something, otherwise it's going to give an error. Required. But we can also pass a list here, and we can say true for our first parameter, and for the second one we can put what we want to say. In the event that the user doesn't put something, we can say please add a text field. Okay, and then after this we can create another object here, and we can say timestamps, and we can set that to true. And that's going to allow us to have timestamps, so when a user does input text, it'll provide us with the day and the time that it was created at. Okay, so let's go ahead and export our model. I'm going to say model.export module.export is equal to mongoose.model, and here we're going to pass the name of what we're going to want to call this model that we've created. We're going to call it journal, and after that we're just going to pass what schema or what journal schema that we're going to reference as, which is the journal schema that we just created. Okay, now if we save that and we click out of here, we're going to want to bring this in to our journal controller. We're going to say const journal is equal to require, and here we're going to pass the path of where we got that, so which was models / journal model. Okay, awesome. Drink break.
The time is 7:00 p.m.
Thank you, computer. Okay. So for this first one here, let's actually do this, because if we go to Postman, let's go to Postman here real quick. If you come to Postman, and let's go to a post, because a post request is going to allow us to create a journal. So if we send this, it's going to say create new entry. Now, what's going to happen here, what I suspect is going to happen, is if, get out of here. Get out of here, bud. If we come here and we try to send some text, let's say if we wanted to say journal 234. If we want to send it, see, it's not giving us anything. It's not giving us anything back, and not even in our application. And the reason that is because we have to create a middleware in order for our application to be able to read the URL encoded, as well as telling our application to use JSON. Now, here, let's go here, and if we say, we can even try to tell our application to print something. We can say console.log, and then here, if we say require.body.text, it should console log, which means it should print to the screen anything that the user is going to put in the body here. That's what require body.text is. It's just telling our application to require whatever text was put into the body from the user. Okay, so if we go here and we are back in the body and we try to send something again, boom, okay, this is the error we wanted. So if you see here, it's giving us an error. It says cannot read property text of undefined. So it's saying that the text that we're trying to send is undefined. And if you see here, it's also going to give us undefined, text of undefined. And so why that is because we need to include a middleware in our server file to tell our application to what kind of data to read the information that's coming in as. So here, after we initialized Express app, let's go ahead up here and start a comment, and we'll say JSON middleware. And all we're going to want here is we're going to say app.use, and in here we're going to say express.json as a function, and then after that we're going to say app.use, and in here we're going to say express.url encoded, and in here we're also going to pass an object, and we're going to say extended, and we're going to say false. Okay, now if we save that, we come back to Postman, and we try to send this here, it should console log, and it should not give us an error. Go ahead and send that, boom, okay. So it didn't give us an error, and if you look down here, it returned what we wrote. So if we also wrote journal to, let's just say journal 1, and send that to a server, you're going to see here in our terminal, we get journal 1. Now another thing I want to do, so let's see if a user doesn't put anything here. So if a user is trying to submit information without putting text in there, it should give us an error. But as you see here, it's not giving us an error. And if you look at our terminal, it's just sending us back an empty space. If we do it again, more empty space. If you look down here, it's just returning empty space. So we actually want to set something up here to notify the user that what they are trying to do is not right. So here, we're just going to create an if statement. We're going to get rid of this console.log. And we're going to say if require.body.text. Now if we put an exclamation mark in front of that, that's saying if require.body.text is not there, we're going to create a function, and we are going to respond with the status 400, which is a server error. And then we're going to throw a new error. And here, we're going to say, please add a text field. Awesome. And if we save that, if we come back here, and if we try to send something again without putting text in there, it should give us an error saying, please add a text field. And we send it, and we get error, please add a text field. Awesome. And down here, we also get the error, please add a text field. Okay, awesome. So we got that set up. One thing that we want to do is we want to set up an error handler, because we don't really like the way that this error looks on Postman. It's showing the stack, which is showing all this information that a user doesn't really need to know. A user just needs to know, like, hey, please add a text field. So we're actually going to write a function to take care of that. So in our backend folder, we're going to create a new folder, and we're going to call this middleware. And in our middleware folder, we're going to create a new file, and we're going to call it error middleware.js. Okay. And here, all we're going to do is we're going to say const error handler. We're going to call this error handler is equal to, and in here, we're going to pass error, request, response, and next. And then we're going to have an arrow function that fires off. And here we're going to say const status code, because we're going to set our own status code, is equal to request.status code or 500. So it's just saying that we're going to use the status code that comes back with the request. And if that's not there, then we will use status code 500. Okay, and here we're going to say res.status, and we're going to pass our status code variable that we just created. And then we're going to want to return back a JSON. We're going to pass an object, and here we're going to say message, and we're going to want the error.message. And then we're going to say stack. And here we're going to say process.env.node environment, and if that is equal to production, meaning that if our node environment is equal to production, we will provide null, else we will provide error.stack. So all that's saying here is that node environment that we created in our .env here, it's putting us in as development, because right now we're developing our application. But once the application is done being developed and it goes to production, then it would be considered in production. So all we're doing here is we're saying if we are in the production stage of our application, we're just going to provide null, because a user does not need that information. Other than that, we're going to provide error.stack so that we can kind of figure out what is going wrong. Okay, here we're going to export that is equal to error handler, and we'll save that. And then in our server file, we're going to bring that in. Let's say const error middleware, and in here I'm just going to pass our error handler as the object. Save that, and then here at the bottom, before we listen for the port, we're just going to say app.use, and here we're going to pass our error handler. If we save that, now when we get an error back, it should look a lot more different. So let's take a look at that. Okay, let's move that here. So now if we send with no value, so this is what our error looks like before. It's giving us error in this whole stack. But if we did that correct on the first time, it should just give us something different. Boom. Okay, awesome. Now if you look here, it's giving us a message in the stack. It looks much different. Now it's still giving us the stack because we are in production mode, development mode, I mean. But let's go ahead and change this to production mode so that you can see what it would look like. So go here. If we save that, and if we come back here, let me send it with no text, it'll just say null. So this is what a user would see. It would just, all they would see is really is the message, please add a text field. Okay, awesome. But we're not in production mode. We're still developing this, and the stack is very useful when trying to track down an error. So we will keep that as is. Okay, now that we have our errors set up and now we can get good errors, see, now we will do is we will start giving functionalities to our routes. So here, we're going to create a new variable. We're going to call it journal. This variable, we're going to say await, and then we're going to reference our model that we've created, our journal model. And in here, we're going to say dot find. And dot find is going to bring back all the journal entries that one has created. So if we go, and then we're going to want to get rid of this here, and then we're just going to want to return journal. Okay. There we go. So now that was super simple for just getting all the users' journals. So now let's do our create entry. So now we're going to write our functionality to allow a user to create a new journal entry. Create a variable, it's a constant entry is equal to await, and we're going to say journal. We're going to reference our journal model that we've created, and we're going to say dot create, and in here we're going to say text. I'm going to say require.body.text because we're going to want to require any text that the user inputs. Okay, and after we've created that, okay, just go down here and we can just return our entry. Okay, awesome. And then we're just going to return the entry. Okay, now we will do our update. So this is going to allow us to update a specific journal entry. And we're going to create a function that will allow us to do that. So here, first thing we're going to do is we're going to want to find the entry first, right? Because in order to update an entry, it has to exist. So we have to ensure that the entry does exist. So we're going to say const entry is equal to await journal dot find by ID. Then here we're going to say request dot params dot ID. Okay. And then after that, we can say if, meaning if there is no entry, what we're going to do is we're going to respond dot status 400. We're going to throw a new error, and we are going to say entry journal entry does not exist. Okay, and then after that, if there is an entry that does exist, we're going to say const updated entry is equal to await reference that journal model journal dot find by ID and update, and in here we're going to pass request dot params dot ID request dot body. Then we're going to want to say new, and we're going to say true. Awesome. Then we'll get rid of this here, and we will respond back with updated entry. Awesome. Now that allowed us to update an entry. If we go to our delete entry, we're going to want to do the same thing. So in order to delete an entry, the entry has to exist. Otherwise, we're going to be looking for an entry that doesn't even exist. So I'm going to say const entry is equal to await journal dot find by ID. And here we're going to request the params.id of the specific entry. And then we're going to create an if statement. And we're going to say if there is no entry, meaning if the entry that they're trying to find and delete does not exist, we will respond that status 400, and then we were going to throw an error, and then we're going to say journal entry does not exist. Okay. And then if the journal entry does exist, all we're gonna do here is we're gonna await journal dot delete one. Awesome. And then here we are just going to pass ID, I think request.params.id. Let's see here. Now if we go ahead and save this, and we go to Postman, let's go ahead and go to Postman. Let's take a little break here. All right, let's go ahead and go over to Postman. Now, if we go to post an entry, let's go ahead and save this actually. Save. Awesome, everything's working just fine. Okay, now if we go here, and let's post a new journal. Let's say journal entry 1. And we'll send that. We'll send a couple. Boom. Now if you look down here in the body, you're gonna see it's gonna respond with entry. And what it's giving us the text, which is the text that we inputted. It's giving us the ID for this specific journal entry that we've created. And then it's also giving us the time that it was created at. Okay, awesome. This is really good stuff. Okay. So if we go, let's go ahead and create a journal entry 2. Let's create a journal entry 3. Let's just create about 5 of them. And you can see every time that we create a new one, it's giving us a new ID, the text, and when it was created at. Journal entry 5, send that through. Okay, awesome. Now if we go to our GET request, what our GET request is going to allow us to do is going to allow us to get all of the goals that we, all of the journal entries that we've created. So if we go and do our GET request, send it, we will get a list of the goals that we've created. Or I don't know why I keep saying goals, I mean journal entry. I did make a goal application not too long ago, so I think that's probably why. But if we look down here, so for our journal, we have journal entry 1, journal entry 2, journal entry 3, journal entry 4, journal entry 5. Now, let's go ahead and update a specific journal. And to update a specific journal, we're going to need the ID. So if we take this here, the ID for journal entry number 1, copy this here, and we put it at the end of our endpoint here, slash the ID of that specific thing. We're going to go to put, because this is going to allow us to update a specific journal. Now that journal that we just pasted in our endpoint here was journal entry 1, but we're going to update it to say journal entry 1 updated. And if we send that, and if you look at updated entry, it says journal entry 1 updated, and it gives us the updated at time. Awesome. Now if we go to our GET requests and we pull all those journal entries again, oops, I'm sorry, it won't give us all our GET because we're trying to get a specific ID, and we just need our API/journal endpoint. Can't spell. All right, so now if you look at our journal entries, we no longer have one that just says journal entry 1, it says journal entry 1 updated, because we updated that. So now that we know our GET request route works, our post route works, it allowed us to create one, and our put request worked, it allowed us to update a goal. So now we have to check to see if our API will allow us to delete an item from the server. So if we copy the ID for this one here, Control copy, and we go to post that here in the slash, not endpoint, and we go to delete. Now if we send that, it's going to give us back an ID of the journal entry we deleted. Now if we go to our GET request, and we go to get all the journal entries we've created, the one that we just deleted should not show up. So if we send, oops, I keep doing this. We don't want that in our endpoint. When we send that, you will see journal 1 entry updated. Uh-oh, I didn't delete it for some reason here. Let me see why this is not deleting. Maybe I did something wrong in my code here. Okay. So wait journal dot, ooh, that's right. So we actually have to call this as a function. Now if we save this and we go back to Postman and we pass that ID in here and we go to delete and we send that, it should send us that back. Now if we go to get requests, that should be removed from database. And if you look down here, our first one that we have is journal entry 2, and journal entry 1 updated no longer exists. Good job. So as of right now, we have complete full CRUD functionality. We can create, read, update, and delete items from the server just by making HTTP requests from the client. Okay, let's see what else we can do here. So now that we have our full functioning API, we have a full functioning REST API. Let's see what else we can do here. I guess the next thing that we can do is create a user model, because in part 3, we're going to be creating user, and then we're going to be adding user authentication and authorization to it. So we're going to protect our user. We're going to be using JSON Web Token to create user tokens and to secure every user's route. Okay, and so what I'm going to want to do here, maybe before I log off here for tonight, we can create our users model. So we'll say user model .js, and it's going to be the same exact thing as the journal model that we made. We're going to want to bring mongoose is equal to require mongoose. Then down here we're going to say const user schema is equal to mongoose dot schema, and here we're going to pass an object, and we're going to say name, type string required, and we're going to pass the list. We're going to say true, and then we're going to say please enter a, I'm going to copy this first. Please enter a name. Okay, then here we're gonna want an email for the user. And here we'll say an email. And then for the password, we're gonna want the user to enter a password. We'll say password. Perfect. Then we're gonna want timestamps for this as well. Say true. Save that. Go ahead and bring that on. Module.export secret mongoose model. Here we'll call this user, and pass our user schema. Okay, awesome. I think that's where we're gonna stop tonight, because I do have work tomorrow, but I do plan on doing part 3 of this YouTube tutorial series, maybe tomorrow or the day after. I won't go too long of a break in between the videos, because in the event that there is someone that's following along, which I'm sure there's not, but for that one person out there that might be following along, I don't want to keep you waiting for too long. So This is for you, bud. Okay. I think we will call that good for tonight. Like I said earlier, at this point we have full CRUD functionality. We have our server set up. We have our journal route set up. We have our API route set up, and they have full functionality. And we have our MongoDB database connected. And we have a user models created. And in our next video, we will be giving that user functionality, and then we will protect our users. We will bring in a JSON web token, and we will encrypt the password, and we will assign a token to every user just to secure each user. But that's going to be a pretty in-depth and a pretty busy video, so I think it's good that we stop a little bit early in order to save time for that in our next video. Okay, thank you very much. Until next time.